So online with me, I got again with me Dorian Cook, who I call a national treasure because his experience, his research, his involvement with the old timers before they passed away, and now he's sharing his knowledge that he learned with us. And today he's going to tell us and show us the tips and tricks or how to increase your finds with metal detectors, how if you're a beginner, how to out search other people. And with that said, Doran, just take it away and tell us what you got for us today.
Okay, thank you, Terry. I'm excited about this subject because, I have seen over decades of teaching people how to metal detect. I have seen that there are basically 10, as I call them, dirt common mistakes that are made by metal detectors. And I'm particularly seeing a lot of these mistakes being made by what I call the YouTube heroes. They're the guys that set up a YouTube metal detecting channel. And, so often when you get new people in a metal detecting group, like say on Facebook, and they'll say, have you got any tips or whatever? All they'll get from the members is go watch some YouTube videos. Well, they don't know a thing about who's who and who knows what. So they figure if these guys have got a channel and they're showing hunts where they're finding things, then they think, okay, I need to imitate these guys. And so they pick up the same mistakes that they're making, and it just goes on and on. And these mistakes will rob you over the course of your lifetime uh, of metal detecting, however many years you get. They'll rob you of hundreds, if not thousands, of good finds because when these people make these mistakes, they don't realize they're making them and they just do it hunt after hunt after hunt. And they get excited because they find two or three coins and they don't realize that they left 20 in the ground they could have had. So, what we're going to try to do is help them correct those mistakes and hopefully greatly increase their finds and their success with metal detectors. Because I'm at 78, I'm as passionate as I was at 23 about the hobby, and just can't get my body to do all the things I used to. I can't climb the high mountains and hunt for gold veins and things like I used to do. So I have to kind of limit my metal detecting to old house sites that are fairly level and out in the open, and not way back in the boonies where if anything happened to me, it might take them weeks to find me.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're going to do is, we are going to go over in detail the what I call the 10 dirt common metal detecting mistakes. I would encourage those who watch YouTube videos to watch uh, the people that are putting themselves forth as expert metal detectorists and see if they're making any of these mistakes after you see this program tonight. And if they are, then you'll know they're not as expert as they think they are. So you don't want to follow their mistakes, and you don't want to assume just because they've got a YouTube channel that they really know what they're doing when they're detecting. There's an old saying that even a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while. And I watch some of these guys go out, and yes, they make some finds, even making the mistakes. Everybody will. But imagine, Terry, what it would be like. You go to an old site, here in Kentucky where I live, we have a lot of old house sites that are long, the house is long gone. The only way you find them, they're out in the soybean and cornfields and things. And, you have to take your detector and sometimes walk a lot of cornfield, walk a lot of acres or something, and you'll come upon a house site. And then you'll start to see pieces of plates and glass on the surface and things like that. You'll get a little visual indication, but your detector is the one that will tell you that you're on an old house site. And if you get on one that's not been worked, and that's pretty easy to do where I live, you can have a ball. You're finding everything from cut Spanish that dates back to the 1700s to seated coins. Oh my, anything's possible. Gold coins, rings, silver thimbles, all that kind of stuff comes out of these old house sites. And imagine though, if you go into one, and let's say you hunt, 4, 5, 6 hours, and you come out with 4 or 5 old coins, and you're saying, "Wow, I had a great day, a banner day." Look at this, I got 4 seeded coins. And what if the truth was, yes, you did, but you left 20. You left 20 older coins. You left large cents. You left this. You left that. And you don't even know. You think you worked the site out and then only had 4 or 5 coins, and you weren't even close. See, that's the thing that I am targeting tonight, and what I'm trying to do with this program.
So
So
I just got to say, Dorian, man, you're kind of getting me excited because you're 100% right. The more knowledge you have of how to hunt right, you're going to find more. So why wouldn't you pay attention to what you're going to say? So I'm going to pay attention right now. So okay,
good.
sorry.
Yeah. And I'll tell everybody in advance, I'm going to trample a sacred cow tonight. There's a whole contingent of people out there. Everybody today thinks they have to have a handheld pinpointer to be successful. And I don't use a handheld pinpointer. And I'm going to show your watchers quite a bit of what I have found without using a handheld. And I'm going to give them my secret method for pinpointing that hardly nobody knows. Very few
Cool.
people know it. And I invented it back in the 70s when I was working for Charles Garrett, at Garrett Metal Detectors. Uh,
So I just want to say something, and sorry for man destroying your
no,
presentation,
that's okay.
but when I started was back in the early '80s, and how I learned, just like you said, there was no pinpointers. We had to learn how to pinpoint it, and I see people nowadays digging a hole with a shovel, cutting the grass. And back when I learned, man, we used a little probe, and we'd probe and find what we was, and then try and pop it out of the ground without digging a hole. So go
That's
ahead.
true. Yeah, we would take a long thin screwdriver with a 7-inch shaft, and we would round the end of it,
Yep.
and that would be our probe.
Yep.
And many times it takes practice, but as I got the practice and the hours detecting went into the hundreds and then eventually into the thousands, um, I got to the point where a lot of times I could pinpoint so accurately a coin that was 6, 8, 10 inches deep. I could take my screwdriver probe and gently put it down and touch it on the very first time it went into the ground.
Yep.
That's what's possible. And I'm going to try to expand the vistas of your listeners that metal detect, and to show them, there's a much bigger world of detecting and things you can do than even though we've got all this tech and all the, like I said, all the YouTube videos and things. In fact, I watched a guy. He is touted all over the internet as an expert detectorist. He's actually not from the United States. He's got an accent. But I watched him metal detect, and I watched him make some of these same mistakes. And I just kind of shook my head. And boy, he really gets the press, and he gets all this. Everybody thinks, "Oh, this guy hangs the moon," and he doesn't even know that he's making some very, very common basic mistakes, which I'm going to show you. You ready to get started?
Cool. Let's hit it.
All right. Okay, so we're going to go to the first of the 10 most common mistakes, and I call it the pendulum swing. You can see the diagram on the screen, okay, I guess.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
all right, if you notice, this guy is actually swinging his metal detector in the shape of a U. You see he's going down and back up. And the only place he's metal detecting is about 1 foot right in front of his feet. The rest of his swing is totally wasted on both ends. It's so high in the air. And it's amazing to watch these guys, how many of them, on these YouTube videos have the pendulum swing. This is a very, very
Really?
common mistake. Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
You just try it yourself. You'll see what I'm talking about.
I'm gonna have to go. I have to go look and watch.
Yeah, it's amazing, and they don't even think about it. And see what happens. You see in the diagram, you see the 3 coils, and you see the red line showing the shape of the swing,
Hmm.
and the blue lines intersecting the black show you the only area they're actually doing any metal detecting as far as coins and small objects. Now, if you're hunting a Model T Ford buried 3 feet deep, okay, you can probably find it with a pendulum swing. But look at this. See, I show 3 coins, and see they can get one, and they're missing two. See,
Yep.
instead of hearing 3 coins from a pocket spill, they hear 1 coin, and they dig that one, and then they start right back with the pendulum swing. So they're only covering, even if they grid off an area. Let's say they grid off an area, 100 by 100. How many square feet is that? 10,000 square feet. And they hunt it forwards and backwards. They're only going to have actually hunted less than 10% of those square feet.
Hmm.
See? And they say, oh, yeah, I really covered that. Yes, sir. I worked that out really good. And the truth is, no, you didn't. You barely scratched the surface. So you see, like I said, from the diagram, how easily they could be missing more coins than they're finding. So let's go to the second diagram. This is still a mistake on major mistake number 1. And this is the correct swing. This is what it looks like. It's flat. It goes from side to side 180 degrees. It makes a half circle. So you're covering about 8 feet of ground with your whole swing, not just 1 or 2 feet right in front of your feet. You see the difference?
Yep.
In a day's time, that amounts up to a lot more ground covered. And that means the more ground you cover, the more good finds you're going to make. It's simple math. So
Yep.
that this is the reason why. And then you can see from the diagram, I'm showing the flat swing there. And with the flat swing, see all 3 of those coins get detected, not just the one in the center.
Yep. And just for those that don't understand it, I mean, I'm sure everybody does, but I always called it like a horseshoe, half a horseshoe swing. It's not the arc up and down like you were saying, but it's the on the ground and a horseshoe swing, just like you're showing on the big picture there.
Right. Now, a lot of guys will actually compound this mistake, and I'll get into that, what they do. Uh, but you want a flat swing with your coil barely touching the ground. And I'll get more into talking about that, because I've seen, I don't know why, very intelligent people can't figure out. I mean, I know some very intelligent detectorists, and they cannot figure out that for every inch above the ground your coil is, that's an inch of depth you lose.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're hunting a site like an old house site where the coins might go 8, 10, 11 inches deep, that extra inch can mean the difference between finding, say, a silver dollar and not finding it. Just that extra inch. Because I've gotten coins like say large cents, and I've got pictures at the end of me digging some large cents and things to illustrate the diagrams, and pictures of the finds. I want to show people what I have found, because I know there's always the naysayers that are going to come out there and say, oh, he's just a big old blowhard and he doesn't know what he's talking about, and blah. He probably hadn't found much at all. Well, we'll try to put that to rest at the end of our interview here.
Cool.
So let's go on to the second one, which is mistake number 2. Notice the guy in the diagram has his elbow bent into almost a right angle, and his shaft is actually extended too far. And this is a common mistake. And people don't know that if you hunt, like this, and get in the habit, you'll do it for years. And you get away with it if you're in your 20s and 30s. But after 40s and into 50s and 60s, you're going to end up with a condition we call detector elbow. It's an arthritic-like condition, and it gets so painful that you can't swing a metal detector with that arm.
Hmm.
So this is a very common mistake. Again, I've seen this all over the internet. in the YouTube videos. Uh, and of course, these guys, a lot of these guys are young. They are in their 20s or 30s, so they don't know that this is something that over time is going to really interfere with their metal detecting. So uh, especially after age 50. So the older detectors that are listening to this, pay attention, and let me show you the correct way to swing your detector as far as your elbow. All right, we're on the next diagram, major mistake number 2, the correct way. Look at this guy in the diagram. You see his arm is extended straight. It's not stiff, it's relaxed. You're not holding your arm rigid, but you're holding it straight. You're not bending your elbow when you swing. You're relaxed and you're swinging and you keep that arm straight. And sometimes it's just like the bent elbow. That's just a bad habit that people cultivate, not realizing it's how bad it's going to be later on. So you can start right now and work on that and break that habit, and you can substitute, make the straight arm, the relaxed straight arm, a new and better habit. And you'll find that when you get up in your 70s, like I am, so I'm 78, I don't have detector elbow. See, I don't have any problems because I've never hunted with my elbow bent. Once the old geezers taught me about that, and told me what was going to happen, well, I quit hunting with my elbow bent and my shaft extended too far. I learned and I made the correction. So I'm hoping that those out there listening to this will do the same thing I did. They'll make those corrections and they'll have a much better overall metal detecting experience as the years go by. Okay, now notice down at the bottom it says coil flat to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we're going to talk more about the coil and angles and things as we go here. We're going to go now to mistake number 3. Uh, okay, this is the wrong way to cover the ground. Some coins will be found, but many coins and high value targets over the course of time will be missed if you don't overlap your hunt. People want to think the whole coil is, covering, if it's an 8-inch coil, it's covering 8 inches of ground, if it's 8 inches long or 11 inches long. And it's not, because you have, in one form or another, a sharp cone shaped signal, as you can see from the green lines, or on some of the T2D coils, it's like a balloon, kind of bulges, but it's still overall, it gets smaller at the bottom than it is at the top. So while you're covering the whole ground, say 2 inches deep for coins and things,
Uh-huh.
you're not covering all the ground down at 8 and 9 inches. You're only covering a little narrow strip. If you don't overlap at least 50% on each swing, then you're really going to miss coins at the deeper levels. You'll find the shallow ones, but you'll miss the deep ones, and that's usually where the good coins really are. They're the deeper coins, because the longer they've been lost, barring any unusual circumstances like plowed fields, when they've turned everything over and so on. If the soil's not been disturbed around an old house or whatever, generally the deeper coins are going to be your oldest and your best. So you can see in this diagram, see that this guy, if he was swinging like this, he would miss one of the 2 coins that were close together there because he's not overlapping his swing. And people say, well, why are you doing this? Well, I'm not seeking glory. I'm not seeking money by doing this. I ended up with a sense of obligation because, when I went to work for Garrett, I was 30 years old, and I kept meeting the top professional treasure hunters in the country. They were friends of Charlie Garrett. They'd stop by to show him what they'd found and plan trips and things. And they just kind of took me under their wing and they said, "Hey, kid, we'll show you how it works." And I learned so much that I didn't have to learn by trial and error because they'd already made all the errors. These guys were up in their 70s, 80s, like I am now, and they were willing to pass on everything they'd learned because they saw me as part of their legacy, what they would leave behind. So I kind of picked up that same obligation. And now that I'm the old geezer treasure hunter, I kind of want to leave a legacy. I want people who are out there making great finds and things because of something that I taught them, that I passed on from my own experiences.
Well,
So that's why why we're doing this.
so cool. But so real quick, I
Yep.
know that you've written a bunch of newspaper or magazine articles, treasure hunt
Yes.
magazine articles. You've written some books. You got a Facebook. Tell us, not to derail you on our mistakes here, but
Okay.
just real quick, if how can people look you up, see who you are, and all that stuff?
Okay. Well, one of the best ways I'm the administrator of several Facebook groups. I have one called USA Treasure Hunting Central, and it's a public group. Anybody can join. And I have many how-to articles and pictures of finds, not only my finds, but finds have been made around the world. It covers treasure hunting not only in the United States, but it's designed to really help educate people who want to be more than just somebody who goes out to the local top lot and finds new money. They want to get into this a little deeper. They want to find old stuff. They want to find relics. Well, there's something there for everybody. Like I said, how-to articles um, that would be a big help. And they're welcome to look that up. If any of your listeners are like I was, were more inclined to Civil War relics, that was one of my favorite things to hunt. And I found about 14,000. I wasn't a strict Civil War relic hunter. In my role with Garrett uh, as marketing and advertising, I had to work shows. I had to meet the public. I had to sell detectors to anybody that walked in the door. That was part of my job. Uh, so I had to be a little bit of everything. In other words, I couldn't just be a relic hunter. I had to be knowledgeable in coin hunting, relic hunting, gold nugget hunting, uh, you know, uh, cash hunting, hunting jars of coins and things. And uh, my first cache, if I digress just for a moment, uh, came the first year I was metal detecting. I was living in a lower middle class neighborhood in Dallas, and I'd cleaned all the coins out of my yard. I found that, graduated to hunting the parks, the school grounds, like everybody did back in the 70s. I started in 72, and I got onto a one-story elementary school. And the summer, they didn't care if you hunted the grounds. They didn't care if you metal detected. Then, there was no terrorists, no security. That it was just nobody was there all summer.
Yeah.
So the playground produced a lot of good coins, old buffalo nickels and silver dimes and things. And one day I was looking at this shrub, this hedge about up to my chest, and it was right in front of the windows. It came up to the bottom of the windows of the classrooms on this one wing of the school. And I saw there was kind of an area about maybe, that wide behind the hedge. And I thought, well, maybe kids threw coins out the window or something. We did that back in high school. I know guys that threw, coins out the windows of our school. Why? I don't know. Just because it was something that we weren't supposed to do and all that, I guess. But so I crawled in back behind that hedge and I found a penny or two. And I got down towards the end and I got a really big signal. And here was a sandwich bag buried about 2 or 3 inches deep in kind of a dusty soil. And it had 300 mercury dimes in it.
Wow.
Well, you can imagine it just blew me away. How did they get there? Why were they there? Did some kid get into his dad's coin collection? You know, who knows? But anyway, that was my first cash find. So
That reminds me of when I was a kid, and that's probably exactly what happened. Some kid got into his dad's coin collection, and I remember when I was in junior high school, I had a buddy, and he stole $20 out of his mom's purse. $20 back then was a lot of money. That's we was afraid that he had that much money. People was going to ask questions. Today $20 is nothing. Back there in the early 70s, late 60s, that was a lot of money. He was so afraid to spend it that somebody had asked questions why he had that much money that he just chucked it under the seat in the show house. So there's probably something happened similar like what you're talking there. He got nervous thinking, why's this kid got all this money? Because back then, a bag full of dimes, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I wouldn't mind having 300 Murphy dimes right now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, okay. Well, let's get back to our mistakes here. We're going to move on to on mistake number 3. Now, this is the correct way on the next slide here. You can see how I drew the coils so they overlap, see, with each swing. And see how the green lines, how they intersect both coins. You don't miss any coins. I mean, it's not impossible to miss a coin, but it is much more likely that you won't miss very many. So the more coins you don't miss, the more fines you go home with. And that's what this is all about. So now we're going to go to mistake number 4. That's a pretty simple one. Oh yeah, and this is the we call this coil position on the left is we call it in launch position, like a rocket getting ready to be launched or a missile, off the ground. Uh, I've seen people hunt like this, and I'm
Really?
thinking, what are they thinking? The only place they're detecting is right under that back edge of their coil, right behind the bracket. That's only that one little spot. So they're covering minuscule pieces of the ground that they're swinging over. They're not hardly covering the ground at all. And yeah, they can get lucky and hit a coin, but you can see as I drew the red lines, see how they're only getting something that's very shallow. They're not going to get the deep coins at all. Um, so if you want the deep coins, that coil has to be flat to the ground. It has to be parallel with the ground. And like I said, that's something that people do, and they don't even realize it's a mistake because so many detectors are bought from discount houses, and people don't get the kind of instruction. Back in the 70s, when I was with Garrett, we had over 400 dealers nationwide. And when I took over as the marketing director, we had a little less than 200, and a lot of them were coin shop dealers. And the people were selling our detectors didn't even know how to teach people how to use the controls on them. They were just it was just a product they were selling. They did not metal detect themselves. So
Uh,
I got rid of all the non metal detecting dealers. To be a Garrett dealer, you had to use a metal detector and you had to be experienced and not somebody who just started. And uh, because if a person gets the right instruction, they're not going to go out and find nothing but pull tabs, and a week or two later, the detector goes in the closet and they're never used again. If you explain to them, take them out to a park or something and teach them and show them, and they understand what the goals are and the fact that they're going to have to spend 100 hours with that detector before they start getting really, good with it. That it's not just all I have to do is buy a detector with all the bells and whistles, and I'm going to find great stuff. It's not that way. It's 80% user. I mean, yeah, 80% user and 20% detector. You can take I can take a $300 knock the macro simplex, which I own and use, and I can go up against guys that only have 2 or 3 years experience, and they've got a $2,000 Deus or whatever, and we can go out and Relic or whatever, and I'm going to find probably 3 to 4 times more than they will.
Wow.
and they don't understand. See, yes, they've got a much more expensive detector. Yes, it's got, you know, more bells and whistles on it. Maybe it even goes a little deeper, but they don't know how to operate it expertly because they haven't put the hours in on it yet. And so that's my advantage. See, I
Well,
have I have put those hours in. I've got thousands of hours on metal detectors. I've got hundreds of hours, you know, probably 200 or 300 hours now on my Nocta macro, uh, because you know, it was such a low price and it had so many high-end features. I was curious to see, you know, would it measure up? Would I be satisfied with that detector? And the answer is yes. You know,
mm,
uh, just down the road here recently, behind me, about a half mile on the side of a mountain in the woods, I popped a 1796 Spanish Real.
wow, cool.
Yeah, it was about 6, 8 inches deep, and so the Nocta macro did great, you know, and that like I said, it's good. It's the best, probably one of the best values for the money in terms. If you don't have $2,000 for a metal detector, and I don't have this in the program, but let me state that uh, the price of a metal detector does not guarantee that you're going to make great finds. Um, if if you put, say, 300 hours on a cheaper metal detector, and you go out with somebody that's got a $3,000 metal detector, and they've only had it 2 or 3 months, you're actually probably going to make more finds than they will.
And
And
you're 100% right. You know, you could have the most expensive, the detector that has all the whistles and bells. That's not going to guarantee you're going to find a bunch of treasure. You know, 100% you got to learn the tips and tricks, what you're showing right here and now, but also you need to learn your detector, how it reacts, how where the pinpoint is, you know, how what does the discrimination, you got to learn, you got to spend time and learn your detector.
you do. One of the biggest things when the guys graduate to cache hunting or treasure hunting, you know, and they think something's down 5 or 6 feet or whatever, and they go out and get what's called a two-box unit. Uh, and you know, it's advertised it'll go 10 feet deep on a pot of gold coins or whatever. That may be true, but the problem is there are so many variables. Um, for example, uh, I was looking for a treasure. I was following leads on a treasure I was pretty sure was still there, had been lost in the 1800s along the Brazos River in Texas, west of Fort Worth. And as I got to the area, here was a guy that had I think a White's two-box unit, and he's got a hole dug about 6, 8 feet square and 12 feet deep. And I stopped and I looked and I said, "Hey," I said, "this is not where the treasure you're looking for is." I said, "What you're picking up on your machine is a tree root with a lot of moisture in it." Well, he cut loose with quite a bit of invective, you know, and basically told me what I could do and where I could do it. And I just smiled and said, "Well, have a nice day then." And I went on, you know, and to the area where I knew that the treasure would be found. Now, I didn't find it that day, but that was my first trip, and I was, you know, starting to research it. But I was out all day looking for certain markers and things. And when I came back by about 5 in the evening, want to get out of that country before the rattlesnakes start crawling at night. Um, I came by the hole, and the hole was now 15 foot deep, and there was a big tree root exposed in the bottom of it. And his metal detector, two box, was wrapped around a tree, and he was gone. So you see what I mean? That you've got to know, you know, it's not the machine uh, that's going to make you successful. It's you becoming an expert operator of the machine is what's going to make you successful.
Yep.
And if people understand that and, you know, are willing to pay their dues and put in the hours it takes to become expert, Uh, and I would really encourage you younger people, if you can find an old geezer treasure hunter like me that you can go out with them. And don't get mad and don't get upset when they find more than you do. Learn from them, copy what they do, uh, and be grateful that you have a chance to learn that way. Because without that kind of instruction, you're out there all by yourself. You say, "Oh, I'm a lone wolf. I hunt by myself." Well, okay, you can do that, and you can waste 10 years of your life getting to where you could be in terms of expertise in less than a year. See,
Yep.
so anyway, let's keep going here because we got some very important mistakes still to cover. Going to the next slide, this is major mistake number 5. This is an easy one to fix, and it's a common one. In fact, this expert that I was talking about, that's very famous on a certain reality series on YouTube, I watched him hunt, and he was making this mistake here. Your coil wire needs to be tightly wrapped around the shaft. If it's like the guy on the figure A there, where it says wrong, look at the coil wire, how loose it is. When you move the wire as you swing your detector, you're going to change what's called the impedance of the coil, and you're going to get false signals. That will generate false signals if that detector wire moves, because remember, it's metal, it's close to the detector coil, so the detector coil is picking up that wire. Now, if the wire is tightly wound, then the coil basically tunes it out. The electronics compensate, and it does not create false signals. So there's an easily corrected mistake. Just look at the guy on the right there, and make sure that your wire looks like that when you're swinging your detector.
And I can see on the guy on the right the correct way. You can see a little kind of a knot there, a little ways up from his coil. Usually that's some kind of a Velcro strap to help hold that coil, that wire up too off of your coil. So
Absolutely, and you can actually use a piece of electrical tape too if you don't have
that's a good
Velcro in.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that like I said, all these things, the small things mount up. You know, when you've got 5 or 6 of these 10 mistakes in your detecting, see, you're really, really robbing yourself of a lot of nice finds. So that's what I want to try to help people stop if they're doing it. The big thing is, like I said, correct these things, and it doesn't take long. Usually, go out on your sites for a month, and I've had people come back to me and tell me, well, this is amazing. I'm finding, so much more than I did before. And I didn't think there was much on these sites, but I was just missing a lot of stuff. I said, yep, yep. We've all done that, but we don't want to do it our entire detecting lifespan, so to speak. Okay, now we're going to go to uh, the next 5. I actually broke this up into 2 parts because I originally did it as an article. And our mistake number 6, bringing that up, you're going to hear things like if you're hunting an old, say, house site, and there's a lot of metal signals close together, then you're going to want to turn your sensitivity down to hunt. And that's only partly true. Now, whenever you find a new site, don't listen to these people that tell you to turn your sensitivity down. Turn your sensitivity up. Hunt it first at full sensitivity. Get everything you can find at full sensitivity. Then, with a big coil, your biggest coil. And then, if you want to cut down your sensitivity and maybe put a smaller coil, instead of a 5 by or 6 by 11, maybe a 5-inch coil or something, that's the time to do it after you've covered it first on full sensitivity. Because if you cut down the sensitivity, look at my diagram. On full sensitivity, See, there's a silver half dollar, there's a square nail, and there's a rusty tin can, and the coil is over all three of them at the same time. And so the bigger items are going to mask the silver half dollar signal. Uh, Sometimes it will give you a little tiny chirp, a high pitched chirp. But what you're basically hearing as you swing across back and forth, you're hearing these two metal, a rusty metal objects, say, and maybe in the middle you get a little tiny chirp. Well, the average detectorist doesn't know, hey, you want to dig that signal. If you hear that little bitty chirp in the middle, you have to really get some hours on you before you start. We call those iffy signals. And once you learn to dig iffy signals, in fact, I'm going to show you a display here shortly of coins I found on an old church site. It had been bulldozed. It was in Fort Recovery, Ohio, in Darke County. And I was there to hunt artifacts from a colonial troop and Indian battle called St. Clair's Defeat. And General St. Clair had suffered the worst defeat in the history of the U.S. Army in terms of percentage of casualties, and that still stands to this very day. So I wanted to get some fired musket balls and things, but it turns out they built the town of Port Recovery right on top of St. Clair's camp where he was attacked, where the battle took place. So there was hardly anything that wasn't under concrete or under a building. But on this corner of a side street off of Main Street, here was a fresh plowed lot. I mean, just nothing but bare dirt. And obviously, I figured out something had been torn down there. It turned out to be a church, an old church had been torn down. And I went across the street into the one of the businesses to see if I could find the owner. It turned out I hit the jackpot. This guy was the owner, and he gave me permission to hunt. I said, "Sure, hunt all you want." Well, it was full of metal signals, worst trashiest site I was ever on in my life. The metal signals were 2 or 3 inches apart over the whole lot. It was driving me crazy. Nothing but junk. And I hunted 2 hours, and I was a very experienced hunter by that time. And I had a Fisher 1266 detector. And after 2 hours of hunting, I didn't have a single thing to show for it.
Hmm.
And I'm starting to think, well, I might as well pack up and go home. But I sure drove a long way to be here. And it looks like, this is gonna be a total bust because I didn't have anywhere else to hunt. And I thought, I'm gonna dig one more signal and then I'm leaving. And I dug one of those iffy signals I'd been ignoring. I was trying to get a good solid hit, and I was getting this cross between a nail and a coin signal. And I sometimes those are bottle caps, and I wasn't digging them. Well, I dug my last signal. I dug one, and it was a mercury dime. Whoa! Well, now wait a minute. I heard other signals like that one. So back I went and started all over again, like I hadn't even hunted the place. And I started digging those iffy signals. Terry, I ended up today with 50 coins, 34 of them silver.
Wow.
I had everything. I had, barber halves, barber quarters. I had seated dimes. I did dig up one large cent. And because it was a church, I ended up digging gold crosses, and I got a child's gold ring with a ruby in it. I mean, I'll show you. I got a picture of that collection, and it all came in the next 4 hours after I was just about to give up. So that makes the point about iffy signals. But uh, like I said, don't only go into a site and only hunt in low sensitivity, so you don't see, like if you look at the diagram, figure B, when you turn the sensitivity down, the field narrows and you're not picking up the square nail and the rusty can, you're only picking up that coin. But the problem is, if you look at the length of the blue lines on the two figures, you lose depth. You're going to miss deeper coins. If you've got a silver half or a silver dollar, say down beyond what your detector will pick up if you turn the sensitivity down. You might catch it if you hunt the site on full sensitivity.
Hmm.
You might just get a chirp or enough to make you dig the signal and get it. In fact, you will occasionally do that. Uh, and you'll go and think, "Whoa, boy, am I glad I dug that signal. I almost walked away from that one, you know." And so that's what I'm saying. It's not one or the other, like these guys are teaching. It's do both. Do
Ah.
both. See, uh, something else too uh, that really, well, that's another mistake, and I would preempt myself. This is when we come to it. Okay, so and Terry, if anything here, if I'm not making myself clear, call me on it, ask questions. Think
Nope,
about what.
I understand that. I can see now that I didn't really understand how sensitivity worked. I just thought it lessens your depth, but it lessens your field of view, huh?
Right, it comes in narrow too. See,
Okay.
so you can't have as many metal objects
Right.
under your coil at the same time.
Right. Okay.
That's why it works. And sometimes on certain sites that are just carpeted with square nails and things, it might be the only thing that works. It might be the only way you find any coins at all. Uh, but if you don't hunt it at full sensitivity, you'll never know.
Yeah.
So, because anything you get at full sensitivity in a heavily trashed site is going to almost certainly going to be good. It's probably going to be big silver, see. Otherwise, you wouldn't have got a hit on it at all.
Well, I can
You
tell
know?
you right now that I've been good all the way up until here. Now I just learned something from you. Thank you.
All right, great, great, great. That makes it all worthwhile there.
Heck yeah.
Okay, all right. Let's go to major mistake number 7, and this is I have an interesting comment on this one. Um, everybody, I watched some of these guys that put themselves forth as expert, and I've watched them dig, and I watched them pull a coin out, and they rub it a little bit. And, oh, I hit it with my digging tool, and they don't even realize what they're saying. They're saying, "I just proved to my followers that I don't know how to pinpoint. I just marked a $200 coin, and now the value is $25."
Mm,
You see, they're so casual about it. To me, it is awful if I hit a coin. I am upset with myself, and I really bear down if I and not that I haven't ever hit one, but honestly, in all the years I've been detecting, I know the coins that I've marked with a digging tool are less than 10. I've still got fingers not used on that. Maybe 6 or 7. Uh, but there's just, if you really know, and this is a big area, big problem area, is that the vast majority of metal detectors do not know how to pinpoint. So we're going to try to give them some tips here in just a few minutes, and see if we can make them better pinpointers.
so real quick, man, I have that exact experience. I was detecting and I hit I didn't know what it was, but I had a signal. It was an old mason jar is what it turned out to be. And the ground was hard. I jumped on it hard with with a shovel and I hit the jar and broke the jar because I thought I was far enough away, but it was a mason jar. And I broke that jar. I mean, there was nothing valuable in that mason jar, but it was full of wheat. But I busted that. It was an old, it was an old glass top mason jar, had glass in the lid. But that made me sick because that was something cool that was found, and I busted it.
Yes, sir.
That was so. What you're saying is 100% right, man.
Yes, sir. And the average person wouldn't know this, but there's over, of course, collectors. They're called fruit jars. There's over 1,200 different mason jars,
Hmm.
and some of those mason jars are worth up to $10,000.
You're kidding.
No, sir, I am not. I'm not.
Wow.
If you ever dig, not a modern replica, but an original cobalt blue mason jar, it's been several years, but since I was up on the prices. But you're looking probably minimum on a bad day $3,000.
Wow.
Um, yeah, I always wanted to find a cobalt blue mason jar. I've dug a lot of dumps, and I found pieces of them. In
Mm,
fact, I found a piece of one that had some of the embossing on it in my creek, just about 150 feet from me,
wow.
and it was what we called, what bottle collectors call a crying piece, because it was a $4,000 jar if it had been,
Wow.
and I had part of the bottom and the side with just a few letters, enough letters to identify it,
Yeah.
the books. And oh, that was just like that's a crying piece.
Yeah.
So anyway, uh, I'm putting this in here to say that this is something. If you're doing a lot, if you're hitting your high value targets, you're marking them with your tools, then you've got to improve your pinpointing. Uh, and I'm going to show you how in just a few minutes here. But I wanted to call attention first to the fact that marking a coin, or a ring, like the Aussie gold hunters, they're all worried about hitting a nugget with their uh, picks that they dig with and marking it with that.
Mm,
Uh, and they do have a chance. The way they dig and the way they pinpoint is not very accurate. Uh, but see, what happens is everybody imitates what they see, commonly. And if the people they're imitating are doing it wrong, then they just simply think, well, this is the way it's done. And they go on and keep making the same mistakes. And it keeps being perpetuated literally generation to generation that way. So, anyway, uh, like I said, I'm calling to attention that if you are, it's one thing. Sometimes a coin on the edge or something will give you be a little hard to pinpoint accurately. And once in a great while, it's not out of the normal. It's impossible not to ever mark a coin, but it should be a very rare occurrence. Okay, now we're going to go to mistake number 8, and take a look at that hole with the detector coil next to it, and see all the dirt that's come out of
yep.
the
Yep.
hole. And you see now part of it's missing down here at the bottom. See, it's not just on that side, it's also some over here
Yeah.
on the other side. All right. Um, this hole was dug by a well-known YouTube hero in the metal detecting uh, community, and he has a large following. And I watched him open up this hole, and I took a screenshot of it uh, to get it. And it was a small, high value target, like a very small coin. And like I wrote down here, you can see he scattered the dirt from hell to breakfast, as they say in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the more dirt and the further from the hole you scatter your dirt, the longer it will take to fill the hole back in. Simple common sense. All right. Time, therefore, is automatically lost if you scatter the dirt from your hole. You're absolutely forcing yourself to spend a few seconds more trying to gather all that dirt and get it back in the hole. So the more time you spend making a mistake like that, the less time during the day you will be digging finds. You're using up valuable time that you could be swinging your detector, because to swing, make a full 180-degree 8-foot swing takes what, a couple of seconds?
Yep.
So if you lose, for every 2 seconds you lose, you're losing one potential swing of your detector, and that could be the one that gives you your first gold coin or your first silver dollar. You see, there'll be less swings in a day detecting the bigger your holes are and the more dirt you have to fill back in.
So,
You
so
just
for those that don't know, why do you want to fill your hole back in? Why wouldn't you just leave the hole open? Talk about that.
Well, again, that would depend on the circumstance. Um, in a farmer's field, you do not want to leave a hole open. I don't care how rough the field is, because the farmer sees that uh, as disrespectful and as you being ungrateful for the permission that he gave you to hunt. Now, people don't think about that aspect very much, but that is a fact with farmers. I live in a farming community, I own a small farm. I converse with farmers, I ask permission from farmers, and I know, how they look at that, and I've heard their comments. So, uh, you don't want, uh, like in a pasture, and the farmer's got cattle. You don't want the cattle stepping in that hole, maybe breaking a leg or a horse or something. See, you don't want livestock hurt by leaving holes open. That's another reason. Um, I think you've got something in mind, Terry. What,
Well,
what did you?
I'm just thinking, yeah, exactly what you said. Same in somebody's lawn. If you start leaving open holes, if you go to a park and leave open holes, pretty soon that ruins it for everybody else. They're going to shut it down to metal detector. You want that thing to look like it looked before you left. You want to make it look like, nobody was there detected at all, because if you leave open holes, people are going to complain. People are going to block people from detecting there, and it ruins it for
Right.
everybody.
Now, with the farmers here, for example, in the soybean fields, as long as you fill the hole back in, you don't have to camouflage it, try to make it look like, you know,
Yeah.
because they're just going to run a disc over it next spring anyway, and shallow till it, so to speak. So uh, there are circumstances. Now, I had an interesting experience. Uh, there's a place called Fairfax Station in Virginia, and it's where they took the wounded, the federal wounded from the Battle of Bull Run after the battle, which was a major defeat for the Union Army. Almost, if the Confederate commander General Beauregard hadn't stopped his men, they would have chased the Yankees all the way back to Washington and would have taken Washington D.C. and the war could have been over just about the time it was beginning, because Bull Run was the first big battle there in that area of Virginia. But anyway, I was told that they were going to cut down all the trees in the forest because it's all grown up woods now, and they were going to put in a subdivision. And the archaeologists were not interested in it, and it was just going to be bulldozed, all the trees. So I thought, okay, I'm never going to be able to hunt the battlefield of Bull Run because that's National Military Park. No detectors allowed. So this would give me a chance to get some artifacts, relics that were at Bull Run and belonged to wounded soldiers. So I got there and I walked up a little bank. It was right on the edge of the railroad tracks, where they brought them by train. And I walked up the bank and into the woods, and I saw the most shocking sight, Terry, I'd ever seen on a site to be metal detected. There were dig holes a, a foot, 2 foot apart, all through the woods as far as the eye could see.
Mm.
And I looked at that and I was just shocked. And I said, well, forget this. You know, there's no use detecting here. Look at that. Hundreds of dig holes. They've dug everything that's here. And I turned around and started to walk back to the truck. And then my little conscience bell went off and said, hey, you're the one who wrote an article about the psychology of treasure hunting and said, don't let somebody else's previous digs keep you from success. And here you are, you're walking away without even trying.
Mm.
Nobody was around, but I was kind of embarrassed myself. So I turned around and went back, and I thought, okay, nobody gets it all. I'll at least find a mini ball or two for a souvenir. Terry, I started hunting and I started digging artifacts. Every minute or two, I was getting an artifact signal for
Wow.
all of that digging.
Wow.
Came to a log about 12 inches in diameter, laying on the ground. It was about 20 feet long, probably. And I thought, okay, we'll check that and see if it might be from a tree that was there. Maybe there's some fired bullet or bullets in it or something. Not likely since it wasn't a battlefield, but I ran my big old 14-inch coil on my Garrett Deep Seeker over that log. So I'm 12 inches off the ground. I'm at the top of the log, and right in the middle of the log, I get a signal. I get a good signal, non-ferrous target. So I took my army shovel and I broke open the log. It was rotten, and I broke it in two and managed to move it out of the way. And then the signal got really loud, and I dug down another foot. So it was 2 foot, the foot of the log, and then a foot in the ground, and I got a U.S. cartridge box plate.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. Wow. My hunt was made right there. And I went on, and then I dug what they call a bridle boss. So went up here on the bridle of the horses.
Mm-hmm.
I dug a one of a kind, the only one that's known to have been found. This was not your regular bridle boss that was common that said U.S. on it. When the war started, there were 5 cavalry units in the U.S. Army: first, second, third, fourth, and fifth cavalry. This bridle boss had embossed, heavy, thick brass stamped, made that way. It said E2C. And what that stood for was E Company, Second Cavalry.
Wow.
So I had a bridle boss from one of the first 5 cavalry units in the U.S. Army. How's
Cool.
that for a historical find?
Yeah.
And I and as far as I know, that's the only one that's been found. So, uh, you know, and I came out of there. Oh, I came to a hole that was something like 18 inches deep and that big. And everybody left the holes open because the bulldozers were coming in.
Mm-hmm.
That's why nobody filled their
Yeah.
holes. Didn't matter. Didn't matter. The developer, nobody cared. He didn't care if he left the holes open. So everybody did because, if you don't have to fill your hole, then you can get back to hunting quicker. Okay, so I run my detector over this deep hole and I get a big signal. And I went down in the dirt, dug out about another 6 inches, and I started coming up with cavalry carbine bullets from the
Mm.
Civil War. I dug 36 out of that hole.
Wow.
And I looked at that and I thought, now, what's happened here? Why did he dig a hole that big and leave 36? These are your rarer bullets. These are not your common 3-ring mini ball bullets. These are to bullet collectors. These are good finds.
Ah.
Actually, were sharp. It was Sharp Hankins. For those of you that know the different bullets out there, these were Sharp Hankins cavalry carbine bullets, and I figured out what had happened. The other hunter had got a signal from the box plate. It was an entire cartridge box, and the cartridges boxes before a battle were filled with 40 rounds. This guy had dug down and found the box plate because it was sitting on top of the bullets, took it out of the hole and didn't check his hole.
Mm.
So finding 36 bullets meant that this guy only fired off 4 bullets in his single shot carbine before he was wounded and out of the action. See, even that told a story, the number of bullets. Once I realized this had been a leather cartridge box, of course, the leather was gone and rotted away. But anyway, I came out of there with my double pouches absolutely loaded. I had one of the greatest Civil War artifact hunts I'd ever had in my life. And like I said, I'd turned and started to walk away from the site. So, boy, talk about a lesson. And don't be intimidated just because somebody else has hunted the site.
So is that going to be one of your other mistakes? Is rechecking your hole?
No, it's not. but that is a mistake.
That is
Yeah.
a mistake, and that is one thing that I see on YouTube and other things is rechecking their hole, or I'll see them half in the dirt and then just wave one hand and the object's in their hand, and just throw the other one without checking it because you never know.
No, that's good. I'm glad we brought that up. Yeah, that would belong. I guess I was trying to keep it to 10, kind of like the 10 mistakes of metal detecting. You got the 10 commandments, and
Yep.
I thought
Yeah.
that might stick a little better, but no, that's a good one that you brought up. Uh, okay, we're going to go to the next diagram, and this is still on this same one about the holes. Um, and I want to make a point up there: inefficient and clumsy recoveries that waste a lot of detecting time. Okay, so what happens is this YouTube hero that dug that hole in the other diagram, he then uh, pulls out his handheld pinpointer and goes rooting around in all that dirt, trying to see, the little bitty, you've got a little tiny
Yeah.
coil on that pinpointer, and he's rooting around instead of taking the metal detector and quickly going over the pile and then knowing how to pinpoint it in the area. If he's going to use a handheld, do most of the pinpointing with the coil.
That makes
See, he
sense.
doesn't know. He doesn't know where in all that scattered dirt it is, um, and he didn't even check the hole to see if it was still in the hole. He's just rooting around in the pile and down in the hole. Finally he gets a little signal. But I watched him. I'd say it took him 4 minutes at least to find the target. 4 minutes, and I try even at 78. I try once I have a high value target signal. My goal is to have it out of the ground and in my pouch within 2 minutes. That's my limit. Now it doesn't always work. Sometimes there's extenuating circumstances. You run into a patch of hard gravel or something, and it takes a little more digging. But as a general rule, I try to see, because 2 minutes. Uh, if I'm in a target-rich environment and I'm finding a target, say every 5 minutes, that means in an hour, I can dig. I can dig 12 targets. That means I'll spend 2 minutes recovering a target and then 3 more minutes swinging before I find another one. So it's all about the math and it's all about the time. Uh, you can't waste time without it demanding that you pay a price at the end of the day of missed finds. The more you swing, the more ground you cover, the more you're going to find.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and I see these guys, and then somebody finds a coin, and everybody comes rushing over from the field, off, four guys, and they stand there and have this big confab, and oh yeah, I think it's this and that, and wow, this is like what we got, blah blah blah. Well, you know what? I think of that song Kenny Rogers did, "The Gambler."
Yeah.
You never count your money while you're sitting at the table. Okay, the idea is get to find, if you want to spend a few seconds identifying it, fine, but don't convene a board of directors meeting, and everybody has to offer their opinion and stuff. And finally, 15 minutes later, you get back to hunting again. Everybody has to walk all back across the field to where their detectors are. I watched that. And I'm thinking, guys, you're robbing yourself. This field's got stuff in it, you know, and the only way you're going to find it is swing that coil over the field. It's swinging that coil that finds the stuff. It's not talking about the finds you've already made. I mean, you can do that over a beer at the local bar or pub or restaurant after the day's done.
Yeah, you're right.
Anyway, all this stuff, like I said, it robs you of time, and time is either your greatest asset or your greatest enemy, as it turns out. Okay, so um, he rooted around with his handheld for 5 minutes or more and was totally unnecessary. If he had known how to accurately pinpoint signal with his metal detector, that would have taken a few seconds and one more push with his shovel next to the location of the signal, and it would have popped out of the ground. So Then you pinpoint once more with your detector coil. You grab a handful of dirt in the area where you pinpoint the signal, and you have your detector and coil laying next to the hole. And you take that handful out of that area and you run it over the top of your coil. And if you get a signal, you divide it in half and you run your hand over to see if you've got it. If you don't have it, you throw that dirt in the hole and you take the dirt in the other hand, and then you've got it. See, and then when you've got a handful of dirt, a handful, then you can look through it and you can find a coin or a bullet or whatever, a button, whatever it is, and just so quickly. And ordinarily, and I'm going to show you some pictures here. Um, I dig a 6-inch plug, and usually most of the time, the target is in that plug. So I break the plug in half. I confirm with my detector that I've got the target in the plug. Plug's laying there on the ground. I run over it. I've got it. I break it in half and I run over my coil. And like I said, if it's not in the dirt I have in my hand, that goes in the hole. See, so not
Yeah.
only get rid of the dirt in my hand, I'm filling the hole as I'm finding the target. And it's just so fast. It's just so efficient. I don't even, in my old age, I do not get down on my hands and knees, and we'll talk about that. I actually bend at the waist, and I find my targets because getting up off the ground at my age,
Mhm.
well, that's going to cut my hunting time down by about probably half during the day. Not as easy to get off the ground as it used to be. So okay, so in the bottom picture there, the guy actually he got a button from the hole, and there it is. He finally found it. So anyway, what should have been a 2 or 3 minute recovery has taken over 10 minutes. All right. Which means if he had targets lined up, he could only dig 6 targets an hour. If he's hunting for 4, 6 hours, multiply hours by 6 targets an hour, and that's the maximum he could do. See. But if he's recovering a target every 2 minutes and had them stacked up, how many 2 minutes are there in an hour? You see, there's 30.
Yep.
There's 30. So the more targets you dig an hour, the more finds you're going to have. That's why speed of recovery and accurate pinpointing are keys to metal detecting, coin hunting, relic hunting success, nugget hunting success.
That makes sense.
Okay, going to the next diagram. And this is one of my recoveries. This is a large scent, 9 inches deep. I took it out and I broke the plug open in half, and there it was looking at me right in the center of the plug where it should be. And see, I take note of where those coins are in the plug because it tells me how accurate I'm pinpointing. It's a check to make sure that I don't get careless, because I don't want to run a shovel into a coin like that. Good grief. Uh, and what I'm going to show on how I do this, as I wrote here on the screen, it's worked on over 170,000 coins and 14,000 Civil War artifacts. And I didn't even mention 1,000 Revolutionary War artifacts. So
That's a
uh,
lot of artifacts, Dorian.
it's a lot of evidence that I present to court to prove that what I'm about to say really works. Now, this being said, you're going to have people that are going to take the position that you'll get my handheld pinpointer when you pry it from my cold, dead fingers. And you know what? That's fine. If that makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside, you hang on to your handheld pinpointer. But if you've got that lean and hungry look and you want to come make the great finds like you've seen on YouTube and the old coins and stuff that you haven't found yet, then you'll listen to what we're doing here because this is going to give them to you. All right. Now, you got a lot of competition out there we didn't have back in the 70s, folks. A lot of competition. I know one detector distributor right now. I know the lady that was redoing that distributor's website, and he told her that he is selling 1,000 metal detectors a day.
Wow.
Yeah,
Holy cow.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Uh, back in the 70s, we could sell 4 or 5,000 a year all over the world and U.S. We were happy. The market's much bigger. There's back then there was maybe 100,000 people involved in metal detecting nationwide. Now there's millions of people. Now
Hmm.
there's millions. So any tips, anything that you can harvest, you glean, they'll give you an advantage over the competition. You got a lot of competition out there. So okay,
So real quick,
yes,
maybe
sir.
maybe you're going to go over this, and if you are, then just
Okay.
talk to it when you go over it. But how are you cutting that plug? You just making a circle with your shovel, cutting it with a shovel?
Yeah, I use a. I wish I'd had it here if I thought. I use what's called generally in the East here, it's called a drain spade. It's a long, narrow. It has a blade on it. Well, here, a blade this long, and it's quite a curve in it, and the it's rounded, like not pointed at the
Hmm.
end. It's rounded. Mine, I got at Lowe's, Home Improvement. It's made by Cobalt, and it's got a very strong fiberglass metal handle, so I can pry very hard with it, not break. But I could actually go down. I can cut a plug, easily down to 12 inches with it. Uh, Makes a nice plug. And I just literally, I drag it behind me. I hold it with my left hand, the handle. It's got a D handle, uh, and I won't use an all metal shovel. I won't buy any of these that are on the market that all the metal detector people do, for the simple reason none of them are insulated, and I have cut into electric lines that
Really?
electricians. Oh yeah, the electricians code calls for 36 inches deep, and they put them in 2 or 3 inches deep.
Wow.
Like they're running a line out to a
Yeah.
uh, uh,
Barn or a well or a
yeah, anything, a light. What do you call the post lights that
yeah.
in front of people's houses? You never know. You never know when you're going to hit uh, a line. Um, I had a guy working for me. I had a landscape business, and I had a young man, 18 years old, a friend of the family, working for me, and he cut into a 220 line going to this new house that the electrician again had cheated on. It was 12 inches deep instead of code 36. And Terry, it blew half the shovel off. I
Yeah.
mean, the blade of the shovel was now reversed. It was like a crescent moon, reversed.
Huh.
The bottom half of the shovel was gone, and thankfully he was wearing rubber soled tennis shoes, and he wasn't shocked and wouldn't handle. Uh, but if you got you got that metal handle and you cut an electric line, you're going to be in a world of hurt.
That's
And they don't, say,
tough.
well, the odds are 10,000 to 1. Okay, well, um, look at the odds on winning the Mega Millions lottery, but somebody won it, didn't they?
Yep.
You don't want to be the one to win the finding the electrical line with a metal shovel lottery. Uh,
So how
so
how big of a plug is that? You're cutting. It looks like maybe like a 3 or 4 inch plug you're doing. You're keeping it pretty small.
that one there is 6 inches in diameter.
6 inches.
Yeah, you figure your coin there is a little over an inch. That's a large cent
Oh, okay.
in diameter. So it'd be about 6 inches. It comes over to there, over to the word is. See it right
Yep.
there.
Yep.
Here is. There's the edge of it. Uh, and I'm going to show you some more plugs here. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, now you can see the hole. I've
Okay.
already. What you're seeing is the dirt that the coin wasn't in that I threw back in the hole. Now, this was an Indian head penny. Uh, See, but I'm showing here that's what you do. Uh, and you see, I have very little dirt to clean up. I can take my foot and push that dirt in and stomp it, in a few seconds. Okay. But people, if you're going to use those handheld pinpointers, don't use them until you find where in the dirt, the area of the dirt your target is with your coil, and then use the handheld if you have to use one. Rooting around in the dirt, trying to dig in the hole. I watch these people, they try to dig deeper with their pinpointer.
Mm.
And I thought, whoa, wait a minute. That tool's not designed for that. It's not designed to dig. So I just, shake my head and let's go to the next slide. This is 8G, diagram 8G. There you can see the edge of a large cent.
Mm-hmm.
Right? See how it's right in the plug?
Yep.
Now, this one wasn't in the center. I would have preferred it would have been in the area where the L is on large. But the point is, I didn't hit it.
Yeah.
See, that's why I dig a 6-inch plug. I don't try to dig a 2-inch plug for a 1-inch coin. 6 inches works just fine and very easy to fill the hole back in and move on. Okay. Now, here's another. All these things that you're seeing that I pinpointed, was done without a handheld pinpoint. It was done with my search coil. Here I'm digging a 200-year-old button out of the field. I just don't need a pinpointer. I don't. It would slow me down. It would not speed me up.
Mm.
I don't root around saying, well, where did that signal go? What happened to that signal? I mean, come on, you dig. If I've dug 200,000 good targets, that means I've dug probably 4 or 5 times that many bad targets. So I've dug a lot of targets.
Yeah.
And
And
I'm going to do what works. Is my point.
yeah.
What really works.
And that goes back to is you need to test your detector, figure out exactly where your target location is on your coil when you're using your metal detector.
It'll always be right in front of the bracket. Right in front of the bracket. I've got some diagrams to show you here. Let's just keep going. Okay. We're going to get into pinpointing big time. Cool. And I'm going to try. Now I can't. It's really hard to teach by diagrams the method I use, which I call detuning. Detuning is the way to pinpoint with your coil really accurately, and it gives you some benefits that nobody hardly thinks about that I'll bring out here. Okay, here you go. Now this one I couldn't see. I got the plug broke down to this small. You can see my finger and the size of the dirt plug, and there's the Indian head penny. There's the coin I was looking for. See, sometimes you have to really. I mean, you go right down to the last handful of dirt before you find the target. Sometimes when you just flip out the plug and break it in half, and usually you look at the two halves, and a lot of times you'll see the coin, sticking out of one of the two halves. But this one here eluded me. So I got down, like I said, to a piece that big before I actually found the penny. Okay, now in diagram 8J, this was one of my relic hunting students, and I'm over there telling him that he's not going to do good if this is the way he's going to dig every target. He's going to get down on the ground like that and then dig his hole. And by the time he gets back up and gets ready to detect again, he's lost valuable minutes of detecting time. So time is of the essence, and I recommend that people time themselves on a site. Start the time when you get the signal and you say, okay, this is the signal I want to dig. When you make the decision, this is a high value target. then start timing yourself, and don't make it a race. Just dig normally, like you do now, and actually learn how long does it take you on the average to dig a target and get it in your pouch. You probably most people do not know, and if you don't time yourself, you won't know. Time yourself at least 10 targets in a row. 20 targets is even better. And find out what your average time is. And if it comes out like 7 or 8 minutes, then you've got some serious improvement you need to do. See, try
Yep.
to get it down, try to get it the average time for recovery. Now, I'm not saying the time between signals, but once you find the signal, the time to dig it, get it in your pouch, try to get it down on the average to about 2 minutes. Now, if you're just out to say, oh, I just love the sun, the wildflowers and everything's so beautiful. And I just get out, I just love to detect, and I just like to lazy along and set my own pace. Well, that's perfectly fine. If that's your treasure and you're more concerned about that than finding old coins to bring home, then hunt that way. You know, I'm just saying that for those who want to get serious and want to really be successful at metal detecting, um, well, small or big targets, then these things will help you, will greatly increase your success over time. Uh, and you'll be somebody they'll be talking about when you get to be an old geezer. You'll be showing off your collections and your displays and everything. And you'll be trying to tell people, well, you got to do it this way, or you got to learn your detector and blah blah blah. Okay, so let's go on. All right, now there are a number of people on social media that are beating the drum. Dig everything. I dig everything. And we'll take a look at those buckets because that's what you're going to dig. And if you dig everything, you are going to find a few coins and rings that you would have missed if you had not dug everything. I admit that. But how much time? I know the house sites I hunt, Terry, excuse me, they have everything from horseshoes, axe heads, parts of horseshoes, everything that they had on an old colonial house uh, farm, you're going to find in the soil, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you spend the time to dig everything on that site, you will have spent enough time to do what I call cherry picking. You could have cherry picked 8 or 10 or 15 other sites. Now, what do I mean by cherry picking? Well, I don't dig everything. Uh, I cherry pick a site. For one thing, in this time, you never know when a permission is going to be revoked. We've had them revoked suddenly. We had a beautiful permission on a battlefield, a Civil War battlefield in southern Kentucky. Beautiful position, permission, big farm, and all of it had action and fighting and field hospitals. Oh, it was just, wonderful. Artillery bombardments, it was all there. And we respected the farmer. We made sure that if we opened the gate, we closed it and everything. And we filled our holes, where wouldn't even know we'd been in that section of a pasture digging. And we dug some pretty big holes because we found some artillery shells and things. So we were coming back. We'd had a successful hunt. We were coming back for another one, and we checked in with the owner, and he said, "Sorry, boys, you can't hunt here anymore." Well, what did we do wrong? Well, I caught some guys trespassing and digging, metal detecting, and he said they saw you in here, and so you're drawing outlaw relic hunters to my property. So
Mm.
I'm not going to let anybody hunt here anymore. And just like that, it was gone. Not our fault. Not our fault.
Yeah.
See? But when you hunt during the day and there's a road, people see you. They think you know something special they don't, and they'll just blatantly come right in on a piece of property without permission. So, like I said, I always figure, okay, this permission is not going to last very long. Now, if it does, well and good, and I'll keep coming back. But just in case it doesn't, I go over that in discrimination. Uh, Depending on how much iron there is, I may listen to the iron signals too. But I'm not digging the iron signals. I'm digging non-ferrous targets because I want to get as much good stuff off of that site before I lose permission to hunt it. So after I have it was a term from my childhood, we call cherry picking the site. In other words, looking for the very best stuff and finding it as quick as possible. The easiest stuff to get out of it. Then I'll slow down. If I still have the permission, then I'll come back, slow down, hunt it slowly, hunt it, north, south, east, west, go back over it. And almost always I'll find more stuff. But, uh, digging everything, man, you could dig all day and not find a single coin in the first day. You might have to dig everything for 5 or 6 or 10 days before you found your first coin that way. So I don't recommend that at all. Now, of course, if we're on a Civil War battlefield, we dig everything because, the iron artifacts are part of what we're looking for, not just the coins and the bullets and other things. But as far as old house sites and things, like I said, take a good look at those buckets and ask yourself, do you really want to dig that much junk off of one site when that represents, just think of all the dig holes that represents. And what if you dug those dig holes on high value targets on another 10 or 15 or 20 sites, which is going to produce more coins for you?
Yep.
You see, obviously the latter is going to produce more. Don't dig everything. Uh, like I said, make that the last resort. Start out and dig the good stuff first. I got on this place that we lost permission on. There had been a house, a famous house. It was there during the battle. It was hit by bullets and artillery fire, and it was used for a Civil War field hospital for 3 months after the battle. And at some time in the 1800s, it burned. So we had permission to hunt the site, and I was hunting with iron audio on so I could hear the iron. And the site was totally trashed, Terry, every few inches with iron metal. And I spent 6 hours hunting with the iron audio on and never found one non-ferrous target.
Huh.
Didn't get one non-ferrous target signal. So I said, okay, this is enough. And I put it on discriminate. And I tuned out the iron audio so I didn't hear the iron.
Uh-huh.
And in that last 2 hours, I dug 13 non-ferrous targets in a row.
Huh.
I got to the last target and I was trying to recover from a back injury that wasn't totally well. And I told my partner, I said, if I don't leave now, it's a mile walk back to the truck. And if I don't leave now, you're
Yeah.
going to have to carry me. So I said, I'm going to dig one more signal, one more non-ferrous signal, and then I'm headed for the truck. And I got it about a minute later, and it was a Union soldier's eagle breastplate. Uh,
Wow.
breast, yeah, yeah. And that was the last signal of the day, after 8 hours of hard hunting. But see, with the iron audio on, I didn't get any non-ferrous targets.
Huh.
But when I turned it off, then I started hearing one. Now that you understand, the first 12 were pieces of can slaw and stuff like that. They weren't modern trash. But then that last one, that sweet one, buddy, that was all worth it. Made it all
Cool.
worth it. Yeah. Okay. Now, major mistake number 10: wasting time and money using a handheld pinpointer. Okay, I maintain that they slow down your target location recovery. They don't really speed it up. They only speed it up if you don't know how to pinpoint with your coil. You see,
Yep.
yes. If you don't know how to pinpoint your coil, you don't want to learn, then okay, a handheld pinpointer is going to speed up your pinpoint. Everybody, the old saying, monkey see, monkey do. And so many people automatically go out and buy a handheld pinpointer and say, I'm all ready to go. They do it because they see everybody else using one. Nobody's asking, is this really the best way? Is there any possible better way to pinpoint than a handheld pinpointer? And I'm going to say yes. Like I said, everybody makes a mistake of rooting around all over the place with their pinpointers trying to find their target. And it's just not necessary. It would be rare. Uh, sometimes maybe if you're digging a real deep hole, like on a cannonball or something, artillery shell, and you're down there about 4 or 5 feet deep, maybe a handheld would be better. I always dug the hole big enough to get my whole coil down because that way I knew when I was getting close. And all you got to do is you turn your coil a little bit, and you can tell in a hole like that. You can tell where the signal is. You don't need a handheld. Anyway, everybody's not doing the math, and let me show you with these diagrams, okay? Look at this picture of this detector coil and look at the green circles. Those represent all the places where your detector will pick up a coin. And you see the one right in the center, right in the center, right in front of the bracket. Well,
Mm-hmm.
what if you could make your detector coil, that great big old coil you're looking at, only pick up underneath that green dot next to the bracket? And it did not pick up around the edges. What if you could do that? Why, you could not only accurately pinpoint in the ground where your target is, you could take that little dot. If the rest of the coil was dead, you could trace the signal. If
Mm-hmm.
you're on a Civil War battlefield and you've got a bayonet, you could trace the long signal and you would know the shape before you dig it. Or an artillery shell. I've done it. You can trace the signal. And I've turned to my buddies and said, I've got an artillery shell here. Dig down, there'd be a 20-pound parrot shell about that big and about that big around, see? But I traced it out and I knew that on that part of the battlefield, I knew the history of the battle. And I knew that's about the only thing that's going to make that big a signal would be a big artillery shell, cast iron artillery shell. Okay, now let's look at the next slide here. Now, this is important. When you use the pinpoint button on your detector, it's going to narrow it down to something about the size of that red circle. It's not going to give you a really accurate, on the spot, X marks the spot pinpoint using the standard method that they tell you to in the instruction manual, okay? But if your detector has a pinpoint button on it, there is a method that I discovered when I worked for Garrett called detuning. And it's hard to show you in a diagram. I'm going to try to explain it, and it takes practice. But oh man, is it worth the practice? Once it doesn't take long. Uh, you go out 2 or 3 outings and you practice this, and you'll get it down. And from that point on, your coil is a fantastic pinpointing tool. Now let's go to the next diagram. Remember, what we'd like to have is to be able to make the rest of the coil dead except for that one little green dot there right in front of the bracket. And that's what I'm going to show you how to do. All right, we're going to the next slide. Now look at this. This is what you have when you detune your detector. You will no longer pick up anything under those red dots. You'll only pick up where the green dot is. It's like you have to move. Let's see if I get my hand up here. You have to move slowly back and forth over the signal, and you have to kind of shoot, like pulling the trigger on a gun, Terry. You have to hit that pinpoint button as you go over the signal and then lock it, hold it down. And if you get it right, and it just takes a little practice, and you will, you'll have what's in this picture here. You can run. I mean, you can take a quarter and you can run it right on top of the coil or on the bottom around the red circle, and it will not make a sound. It will not detect it. But you run it underneath that green dot, and it'll scream at you. That's why I can dig these accurate 6-inch plugs. I know exactly straight down, almost every time where the coin or the button or whatever it is I'm digging. Comments? What do you think?
So you're hitting it and holding it. I'm trying to think. I've had it in the past with one of my detectors that if I hit it, it shrinks it down. But if I hit it again, and like you say, you got to be over it. You hit it, it shrinks it down to that area. But if you hit it again, you're over it. It shrinks it down even a little bit farther.
That's exactly right. And see, it takes a little practice to get used to it. But when you get that thing down to it's so small, the size of a dime, and man, you can trace a signal. I mean, it really helps. You
And,
know,
and yeah, and if you get that signal so narrow, if you happen to be on it, man, you pinpointed right exactly where it is. But if you're off a little bit and you can't find it because it's so narrow, if you just go off and hit it so it's off and you're back to your big coil and start over again and narrow it
right,
down to yeah.
right. And something else I better mention. Sometimes iron objects, like a piece of horseshoe or something, won't pinpoint underneath the bracket. They will pinpoint off to the side, more like where one of the red dots is. Even with your coil shrunk down. But then again, what we're talking about here is trying to find small, high value targets. Rings,
Mhm.
coins, things like that. Uh, so I'm not saying this is a method for if you're hunting horseshoes and axe heads and farm artifacts, then you don't need to do this necessarily, except uh, if you do use this method, know that you'll probably not find the iron object under the green dot. You'll find it under one of the red dots on whichever side it's
Mm,
on.
I
See?
didn't know that.
Yep, yep. Anyway, that's those are the things I really wanted to get across. Uh, quite frankly, for most people, the handheld pinpointer is a crutch. It's a substitute for skill, for making the most of your metal detector.
I gotta agree with that.
And like I said, the quicker you make your recoveries, the more time you're going to spend. The key to success is swinging the detector, not digging targets. You see,
Yep.
it, you know, digging targets is something to be done as fast as possible. Swinging, you don't necessarily go fast. Sometimes you go quick, sometimes you go slow. Now, if I'm hunting for, say, a Civil War camp, all right, not a battlefield, but camp. All right, I know from experience being in many camps that the soldiers had a lot of crates. The food and supplies, everything they used came in. And if you've ever seen one of these crates, I saw one in a museum in Virginia, and it explained a lot because every campsite's covered with what we call camp nails. There's a little 2.5, 3 inch square nails.
Mm.
Well, if you ever see one of the crates, they have them going up all four sides of the crate about, I don't know, maybe a half inch or an inch apart. Unbelievable why they put so many nails in a crate. But see, the soldiers would then take the empty crates and then use them for campfire wood. And the nails ended up spread all over the camp. And everybody says, well, all those terrible square nails, there's just so many of them. You'll dig 10 square nails for every bullet you find, whatever. And they don't realize that the square nails, the camp nails, are a blessing in disguise, a big blessing in disguise. And you never tune them out on your metal detector because if you're looking for a camp, we relic hunters, one of the things we love to find is an unworked winter camp where you've got a division of soldiers, 10,000 soldiers camp for the whole winter. Man, you're talking about thousands of artifacts to be found
Wow,
and
I'll
nobody
bet.
else.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So there were hundreds of thousands of campsites. And quite frankly, I think conservatively, I can say over half of those campsites have not yet even been found because that there were so many that there was no record of. There's no written record of them. Maybe some guy, some soldier in his journal or his diary mentions, Camp Buford with absolutely no hint of where Camp Buford is, except it's in Kentucky.
Huh.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, so Camp Buford, unless somebody stumbled onto it by accident, has not been found. All right. So let's say, you're going through, this soldier was at Camp Buford. Okay. That means his unit was at Camp Buford. So you go looking to find other journals or diaries of soldiers in his unit. And maybe one of them will actually give you a hint. And you might say something like, okay, we made camp just before sundown, and we named it after our colonel, Camp Buford. Uh, and there's a beautiful creek with good water in it down by the railroad trestle. Woo! Wow, there's some great clues. See, camp is near a beautiful creek by a railroad trestle. Even if the railroad's gone now, you can still find the records of Civil War
Yeah.
railroads where they ran. So see a lot of it. I mean, research, of course, that's a whole different subject. Research. We could do 10 shows on research, uh, depending on what you're hunting for. Right now, we're just talking about how to use your metal detector to the best advantage. Uh, but when I'm narrowing it down, and I know, say for example, okay, it's somewhere along this creek, but it could be anywhere along this creek for the next mile. Well, I got to cover a lot of ground. Well, if I tune out the iron, just so I only hear the brass buttons and the bullets and the belt buckles and things, I might walk right through that camp as I'm scouting, looking for it with my detector. I could walk all the way through that big camp, and if I didn't hit a non-ferrous signal, I'd walk out the other side and never know I'd been in the camp. But if you have your iron audio on, the odds are extremely high that you cannot walk through a camp without hitting multiple camp nails. And when you get that nail signal, like on my simplex reads about 3 or 4, you dig one, and if it's a square camp nail about 2.5 3 inches long, yeah, that pretty well screamed at you, congratulations, you found your camp.
That makes
So
sense.
you pull out a marker flag, you mark that spot, and then you start working circle around it and to see where the signals increase. You might be on the edge of the camp, see, and you want to know which direction you go that you hear more and more nail signals. So I want to hear those nail signals because that's how I'm going to find the camp.
Yeah,
The
that
odds
makes sense.
the odds against me finding by digging a mini ball are small. Now, after I get the camp signal, then I start hunting the brass buttons, the mini balls. But I still leave the iron audio on because the iron audio tells me when I walk into the camp by the pattern of the nails, and when I walk out of the camp, the nail signal stop. So I can define the whole perimeter of the camp, how big it was. See, that's part of why I'm saying why that success is 80% operator. See,
Yep.
you have to be a bit of a history detective, and follow clues and things like that. Uh, and the more you do, the better you get at it. And that means the more camps you find, the more finds you make. Right now, I've got a winter camp about 30 miles from me in a big giant valley with thousands of acres, most of them owned by 3 brothers. And as soon as the soybeans are out, I've got permission, to hunt. And there was a division of Union troops, 10,000 strong, that
Wow.
camped. Now, it was just a rumor for years, and I actually came across a reference to that camp in the official records uh, of the Civil War. So, yes, does exist. Now I know for sure. And I also got a story from one of the locals that these 2 young ladies, teenage girls, were hunting arrowheads in these fields, which are abundant. All the arrowheads in any of the valleys around, I mean, all the fields around here, you find arrowheads in. So they're hunting arrowheads, and they found these white things, heavy things. They didn't know what they were. Turned out they picked up about 4 or 5 3-ring mini balls that were drops. They were not fired, which you're going to find in the camps, the drops.
Hmm.
But they'd covered so much ground in that valley they couldn't remember where they found them. So we know it's somewhere along the creek that runs all the way through the valley, but we don't know exactly
Cool.
where. I was told by a local, oh yeah, it was actually not in the valley here. It was in so and so's valley back here. And so here was this big valley, about big enough for a division camp. And the farmer was baling hay that owned it. And I went up to him and I asked him if I could hunt it for Civil War artifacts. And he said, yeah. He said, but you're going to have to hurry. I just sold the property. And he says, we'll be moving off of it tomorrow. And then you'll have to get the other guy's permission.
Uh,
So I had one day. So I walked a crisscross pattern looking for camp nails and never found a one in that
uh,
whole valley. They
uh,
did not camp in that valley.
uh.
So you know what they say. Some days you get the bear, some days the bear gets you, and
Yeah.
that's just part of it. anyway, I hope this has been helpful to folks.
Man, I think it's great information, especially for the people who just got their metal detector, really don't know how to use it, and for those that have had it for a long time, but just haven't didn't didn't really learn from somebody that had the experience like you, you know. So, uh,
Right.
man, I really appreciate this, Dorian. Yeah, I've learned a few things from you, and I'm excited to go out and try them things. So,
I hear you. Yeah, I'm hoping that's what I'm hoping that some of your listeners will do, and you'll get some feedback on down the line on that. One of the things that I also see would be a good one to add to this, if I wanted to expand it to 20, I probably could, um, is that there is a tendency among a lot of younger metal detector purchasers. They don't keep a metal detector very long. They got to have the latest and the greatest. And, they get a detector and they go out 3 or 4 times with it. They say, oh, I don't like this. I'm going to get a such and such detector, an Equinox or 800 or whatever, because somebody else has one. And they just keep switching detectors. I've seen some of these people they'll go through 4 or 5 different detectors in a year. And I can tell anybody who does that, you're not going to ever be an expert metal detectorist by doing that. You grab onto a detector and you dog that detector and you put several hundred hours. I recommend 500 hours on that detector, and you learn its capabilities, until it becomes an extension of your body. And then you change detectors if you don't like it after 500 hours, at least 300 hours on it. But if you keep trying to you're trying to get a detector that will do all the work for you and make all these wonderful finds, and so your finds match what you see on YouTube, you're going to be very disappointed. It just doesn't work that way. Just you got to stay on with that detector. With all my experience, when I bought the simplex and the Nocta Macro simplex, I had to go through the same process. I had to put in 100 hours on it, learning it, and just like with all my other detectors, the more I learned, the more hours. Just like when I first started, the more hours I put on the detector, the better I kept doing with it, and the better finds and deeper finds. You know, and uh, and people said, well, what did you learn about it? I said, well, I had a Garrett AT Pro that I've been using. And I have a very extensive test area, one of the best in the United States. I have a lot of targets buried in plastic pipe at exact depths in the ground, so they never change. People that go out and just bury a few coins at random in their yard and make a test area that way are they're pretty much wasting their time. Uh, those coins don't always stay in the same place in the ground. They can sink deeper. So you never have an exact measurement. I have PVC pipe and I have tees coming off of it, like 2 inches, 4 inches, 6 inches, 10 inches, 8 inches, 10 inches, and 12 inches. And I put caps on the pipe going down. I actually glued the coin in the cap and put it on the bottom.
mm.
So my test coins are always at exactly the same depth. And I asked these guys, the 9 guys I had, they had about every latest and greatest detector, all of them, Mind Labs, Nocta Macro, Garrett, they had them all. And I'd ask them, I said, how many of you think you can get a silver diamond 10 inches in the test area here? Oh, yeah, yeah, we can. Oh, I can do that easy with my, you know, uh, X35. I'm just making up a number, X35 here. And everybody agreed. About well, at least half the guys agreed. Oh yeah, I can do that. I said, well, why don't you start out with the 2 inch and work your way up to the 10 inch? And what I did was where the T's go down with the coins, I painted the T's red, so it's white pipe, and the T's show you exactly where the coin is. And it really is a good way. I could really teach the detuning method, because we know exactly where the coin is, and I can show them. I can shrink the coil to where it won't pick up except over that sweet spot right in front of the bracket. But anyway, not a one of the guys got the diamond 10 inches, not a one, and they couldn't believe it.
Wow.
And the reason I asked him that and had him do it is that almost everybody overestimates how deep their detector is detecting. Uh, One of the things you don't do, don't believe the manufacturer's charts on how deep it goes. I'm sorry, but you know, one of the things I had to do when I went to work for Garrett, well, Garrett was like every other company at the time. They were making claims about their detectors that the detectors wouldn't live up to. So I had to go through all of our advertising and take out the things that weren't true and sell our detectors based on what we knew they would do. And it worked. Our sales increased greatly. You
Hmm.
know, uh, you do not have to deceive the public. Once the public realizes they can trust what you say about your product, boy, that's the battle's nearly won. And it'll build product loyalty. They'll keep coming back to your products. Um, so just interesting things along the way. I had a lot of fun in that job, but uh, just couldn't quite make a living. Charlie was pretty tight with the money back then, and
Yeah.
I made him quite a lot of money in 3 years with my program, and couldn't get any profit sharing. So
Yeah. So,
uh,
so real quick question. What do you think about headphones?
what do I think about them?
Using headphones while you're detecting?
Oh, I always do.
Yeah. I was going to say that I've noticed um, with the headphone, I can hear if the fainter signals better than if I don't have them, so you can find
Absolutely.
things deeper, but there's kind of a trade-off. If you're in an area where there's rattlesnakes or something like that, you might want to not wear headphones because you want to hear rattlesnakes too, so
Let's go to the next one. Look at
oh,
this.
we're not done.
There's some of my finds. I dug every single one of those without a handheld pinpointer.
Cool.
And this is only a small fraction. I had a 10,000 piece Civil War collection stolen from me.
Oh man.
Yep. So I'd start over. This is the start over. This is stuff after that. Uh, but that's what's out there. And by the way, 90% or better of what you're looking at in this photo came off of sites that have been worked sometimes as much as hundreds of times by other detectorists.
Wow.
That's why I'm saying skill. And I don't mean it in a egotistical way, but I had a good friend the Relic hunted with, and he was very bad. He was making most of these 10 mistakes. He had an XP Deus, been hunting 3 years. And I wasn't making those mistakes. And I was finding every time we went relic hunting, I'm finding 3 or 4 times the amount that he is. And he's telling me, "You're the luckiest guy I've ever seen." I said, "No, no, John, it's not luck, it's skill." "No, no, no, it's luck. It's luck." And I said, "John, if you listen to me, I'll teach you, I'll show you what you're doing wrong so you can find as much as I do." Well, it took 4 trips of him getting his butt kicked as far as the number of fines. And he finally admitted, "Okay, okay, show me what I'm doing wrong." So I did. I mean, this guy, poor John, he would dig a hole for a mini ball this wide and that deep. Uh, he'd spend 15 minutes, honestly, a full 15 minutes recovering one small target like a coin or a bullet or something. And I kept pointing out, I said, "John, you know, at the most you could only dig 4 targets an hour." And I said, "I'm digging 12 to 15 targets an hour." And anyway, he got it and he improved quite a bit, but he kept saying, "Oh, you're the luckiest guy I've ever seen." And no, no, it's, I went out with guys. Oh, I went out with one guy and I thought I was pretty good at relic hunting. And he handed me my butt on a platter. End of the day, I had 3 or 4 finds and he had over 50.
Wow.
Well, that's hard on the ego, but that's all right. See, he did me a good thing because he showed me how good I wasn't. And that was back in '79,
Hmm.
thankfully. He showed me a, a level of skill that I didn't have, but now that I knew it existed, I could work, until I came to that level of skill. So that's what I'm saying. When you hook up with somebody that finds more than you do, it's really a blessing. Learn from them, copy what they do, ask them questions about their finds, and most of the time they're going to tell you that they'll share everything they do with you. They'll help you. Metal detector people overall are a great bunch of people.
Yes,
At
they.
least that they have been in the generation that I grew up in, and there is a problem now in the metal detecting clubs where people are what we call claim jumpers. They're stealing each other's sites,
Mm,
or they're coming back to sites with their buddies. Leaving the not telling the guy that took them out to begin with, things like that. That has increased in frequency. It's a lot worse than it was back in the 70s. But
terrible.
we had it happen back there. Good treasure hunting partners are really hard to find.
Yep.
Really hard to find. Okay, let me show you a few more things. There's another group. And if you look over there on the left, that with the red felt background, see all those silver coins?
Yep.
That's what came from that old church site at Fort Recovery. That was where I hunted 2 hours and found nothing, and then the next four found all of that.
Oh.
Yeah, 50 coins. I couldn't believe it. I really it was a long trip home, but boy, it was a happy one. I came, I saw, I conquered. But now all those other frames you see, that's all stuff I find at the old house sites around here where I live in Lewis County, Kentucky.
Hmm. Cool.
Yep, yep, that's what's out there, and that's some miscellaneous stuff uh, from different sites that I've also found. So, I hope that will be enough evidence to convince our listeners, that I'm not shooting from the hip. That I do know what I'm talking about, and like I said, those that want to keep on using their handheld pinpointer, go right ahead. It's not going to hurt me if you do, but I'm going to keep right on pinpointing with my coil by detuning.
Well,
I,
that said, Dorian, again, how can these people find you, get a hold of you, or see the work you do? Like I said, you've written a bunch of newspaper or magazine articles. You
yeah,
got a Facebook website. You got all kinds of information out.
right,
How do they
right.
find you and get a hold of your stuff? And how do they
Well,
stalk you, Dorian?
they stalk me. Yeah. Um, I have a lot of my most recent how-to articles are on a site called focusspeed.com on a website. Focus Speed. That's Joanna Jana Lasnicka's site, and she is an outstanding detector, very, very close friend, wonderful young lady, a lot of experience, and she's getting into the archaeologists out. She lived in California, and the archaeologists are using her now on projects and things. So she's all excited about that. But anyway, she has a lot of how-to articles on her site under different authors, and you just look up my name, on the site, and you'll find my articles if you want to. Anybody wants to read them. Like I said, USA Treasure Hunting Central would be the Facebook place to go. Uh, you can certainly message me. Anybody who is a detectorist, and I can see it from looking at their personal profile, who makes a friend request, I will honor it. I will accept a friend request if there's some connection to metal detecting. We have to be a little bit careful because a lot of people are scammers just trying to get to you,
Yep.
doing the friend thing. I also have another similar site. It's called Kentucky Metal Detecting and History Central. Uh, and if you're really, really into relic hunting, I have a private group called We Dig the Civil War Headquarters.
Mm.
And you can request membership, and again, uh, if I can see that you have some connection to metal detecting, You can even message me and give me a little bit of your background, or the person can, and then I will accept you into that group. We have a lot of old time geezer metal relic hunters. We got some of the best in the country that have done fabulous things. And we have young people too. We have old and new. We have about 75 in that group. It's a small group. U.S. Treasuring Central, we got several hundred members. But I'm not really trying to build the groups. I just start them. I put the articles and things in there, and word gets around. So. Uh, but I'm just, I like to share uh, experiences. I've written 5 books on Kentucky's pioneer Indian War and Civil War history. Uh, and I'm just about to complete my 6th book, which will be on my home state of West Virginia. It's called, West Virginia in the Early Years, and it'll have 50 chapters of stories about everything from Civil War to uh, Mothman and Bigfoot. I've got it's all in there.
Huh?
Yeah, so it's
Well,
my
we're gonna have to do some interviews about that stuff.
really okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, Dorian, with that said, man, I appreciate you sharing your knowledge with the rest of us. Man, that helps immensely. The new people starting out and some of the people that's got some bad habits. So, with that said, I'm just gonna say that's a wrap. And man, I appreciate you.
Well, Terry, I really enjoyed being with you, and I just wish we were closer so we could get together.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
a lot of fun. I could learn a lot from you.